Welcome, welcome, welcome. For those of you popping in, I see the attendee numbers starting to shoot up. Thank you for attending. Like we normally do, we're going to give people a couple of minutes to pop on, and then we're going to get started. We have a really, really fun show for you today. I can't wait to get into it with these two. We were getting into it just before we jumped on, so it's going to be just a wealth of information. Welcome again to Thrive Time. Wow, we're increasing the number of people like exponentially. So much appreciation to everyone who is spreading the word about Thrive Time and also sharing, the link with member families. We're here for you. It's time for us to thrive. All right. While everybody's coming in, I did just think about something. I wanted to say, good morning, Vietnam. That's for anybody under 30. And you definitely probably won't get that reference if you're under 30. That is a movie with Robin Williams from the 80s. And I think it's appropriate, since we're coming up on Veterans Day, to shout him out, because we're also going to be kind of intertwining that with mental health as well. So pretty appropriate.
I was just going to say I'm under 30 and I did not get that reference. So
excellent. All right.
I'm over 30 and I did.
And I am 12. I'm just going to be young forever. No. All right. Yeah. I definitely got that reference. If you didn't, for those of you who are under 30 on the line, definitely do a quick Google search and find, bless yourself and watch that video clip of Robin Williams showing love. So let's get started, everyone. Much appreciation to everyone who is here today. This is our Thrive Time for the month of November. We've had our panel. Typically, our panels have been 4 guides for the last couple of sessions. And this one, we've chopped it down to 2. We have Hannah and Philip, and I'm going to just quickly introduce them. I'm going to first start with Hannah Rose. So using her master's degree in communications, Hannah enjoys building brands through digital and content marketing, and there is more to her life story. Hannah is a direct descendant of the influential Chief Gall and a part of the Hunk Papa clan. She is a native Lakota who grew up on the Cheyenne River Reservation and has shown true perseverance as a deaf individual living in a purely hearing world. And now with modern medicine and a cochlear implant, she always advocates for those with disabilities. She's a certified life guide here on our platform, as well as our client success specialist. Hannah Rose brings her unique insights and abilities and incredible positive attitude to helping others. So Hannah, thank you for being a part of this Thrive Time. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for that amazing introduction, Dave. I'm excited to be here.
Right, let's have fun. Next part. I want to jump over to my brother, Philip Barnes. So Philip is a Air Force veteran with 10 years of service. He's experienced a lot and is still on his way to making more and more success in his mid-30s. Or we'll just say early 30s. We established that earlier, right? We established it earlier, early 30s. His grit for being in the most treacherous of situations, including growing up in the projects, and he still persevered through all of that. And it's not slowed him down one bit. He's fueled by his ambition and purpose in life. And today he is a man of faith and he's sought after fashion industry consultant. And as a person, specifically as a Black man, he's a student pursuing his master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And he's an owner and CEO of Articulation of a King.com. And I would also want to shout out that he is also a certified guide here within our platform and one of our well-being concierges. So if you ever need support, hit him up. He's there for us. He's there to support you. And he has the belief that he's always available to share his knowledge, and he elevates. And I like to say this, he hypes up our crew by sending us positive messages and giving us opportunities to learn together. So you can catch him co-hosting his successful podcast, Black by Unpopular Opinion. So, Philip, welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dave. Wonderful, wonderful introduction. I appreciate it.
Outstanding. So Let's jump into it. Today, we're talking about belonging. And before I jump into that, I just want to do a quick introduction. If this is your first time at Thrive Time, my name is Dr. Dave Hester. I am the Vice President of Guides here at LifeGuides, and I love what I do. I get to work with amazing human beings who bring empathy, loving kindness, as well as just the overall focus of elevating humanity to a place where we can continuously grow and learn and love together. And this is the highlight of my week, is to get to connect with our guides and just talk about some of the topics that are going around in our, I guess you could say, in our stratosphere. So belonging is an experience that humans, we just need. Like we have to feel a part of a group. Otherwise, if you think about ancient humans, if you were in the out group and you weren't belonging, you were going to die. You weren't going to find food. You weren't going to find shelter because you weren't together. And if any of you are fans of sci-fi and fantasy, and if you recently watched the Rings of Power series, there's a group of people who travel together. And if you get left behind, it's basically a death sentence. I don't want to spoil it for anybody if you haven't seen it. But yeah, I'll just leave it there. I don't want to spoil it. I was about to say something, but then I can see the chat flying automatically. You spoiled the movie or the show. So when we're talking about belonging, we're talking about how it transcends geographies and generations. And we're here today to recognize that we're not alone. And we are working together to build greater empathy, not only for each other, but for other beings, other sentient beings, life forms, other thoughts, other people, as well as ourselves. So let's jump into this self-acceptance and belonging discussion and talk a little bit about what we've experienced. So I'm going to first start with you, Hannah. With your experience being Native, I wanted just to kind of give you the floor and kind of give us an idea about, how your journey as far as belonging has, taken you and where you're at now.
This is a really great topic, especially with it being Native American Heritage Month. So I want to welcome everyone with just that opening statement and say, Happy Native American Heritage Month. I'm extremely excited to be discussing this topic, and also with Thanksgiving being this month as well, really focus on what we are grateful for, focus on that gratitude, and then just move forward with that. So, with our history, American history, we often don't include people of color voices. We often don't include, the Native American voice. So it's phenomenal that LifeGuides allows us to have this platform to be able to share, a little bit of that history, focus on what we're grateful for, and then also move forward. So Thanksgiving this month, starting with what I'm grateful for, is just LifeGuides being able to have this platform. So the history of Thanksgiving, as we know, we often get, the nice version of it. The Pilgrims, the Native Americans sat down, they shared a nice meal. There's actually no true representation that really happened. But we can look at that and say, we know the history of what happened in America. How do we move forward from that? And then also, how do we focus on that belonging today to bring that together? So I'm excited to share that platform and just, go forward with that as well.
Outstanding. All right. Well, we're going to touch on that a little bit more, especially with it being Native American Heritage Month. It's good that we learn these things now. I mean, I don't believe they're being really taught in school. And I want to bounce right over to Philip and just ask a question regarding, belonging in the military. You are a military vet and you have, 10 years in the military. I want to just firstly say, I've never been in the military. I'm what they call military adjacent. I worked with contracts supporting military members, but I wanted to ask, what was your experience, with finding belonging within the military, specifically the Air Force?
That's actually a good question. I think that firstly, what needs to be understood is that when you get the basic, you are an individual, right? So I forget the term they use, but they use a specific term to let you know, hey, like, you're not in yet. And by the end, essentially what you are is indoctrinated into the military way of life, and that is a selflessness that comes with being in the service, you know. And so it's kind of hard to find your way sometimes, you know, depending on where you go and the people you meet and the things that you end up doing. Belonging is a personal journey that you have to take and find people who are willing to go along on that journey with you. And sometimes you feel like you belong, and you feel like you are what's the word I'm looking for? You feel like you are accepted and embraced, and then there are other times when you feel like you're not. And so it's a balancing act, understanding that there is a selflessness that you have to have in going into the military, that you are sacrificing essentially your life for the protection of the country, but at the same time also feeling like there is and are moments where you feel the need to be seen, you feel the need to be heard, you feel the need to be understood. And just finding the right people, especially in leadership positions, who are willing to facilitate that kind of belonging, that kind of space to allow your voice to exist in traditional spaces where word from above is law. So it's a balancing act, and some people find it and end up loving it and stay their entire time. I had a wonderful time in the military. Let me not, it brought me to where I am now. So let me not sound like I'm completely dissonant. But there were moments when I felt like I wasn't heard, and I felt like I wasn't respected based on the fact that I had something to say, and the way I went about things based on where I come from was contrary to the military lifestyle. So.
Outstanding. Thanks for sharing that. I want to bounce back over to Hannah because, Phil talked about feeling, belonging. And I know you and I have had this discussion before, just about the way that, some people may look at you. And then when you mention that you are part of the Lakota tribe, there may be there's been a kind of a balancing act with you as well, with belonging within the Native American culture. Can you talk a little bit about how you found that balance of living in the world where you are presenting one way, some people may see you one way, but you are a part of the Native American culture?
Great question, Dave. So first, look at me. You're going to see me with my white skin, my blonde hair, my blue eyes, and I am going to be presently looking white. I get that all the time. So being a part of the Native American culture, growing up on the reservation, I dealt with a lot of exclusion, dealt with a lot of people not truly resonating with the identity that I feel for myself. So growing up in that culture was hard for me to be, say that I'm Native American. I spent a lot of my time, a lot of my childhood, being scared, being, nervous to say, oh, I'm Native American, not because I was ashamed of it, but because I was scared that people wouldn't accept me and that I wouldn't belong. And then, of course, when you don't look like everyone around you, it makes it hard to feel like you belong to that specific culture or that tribe. Of course, my mom is Native American, my father is white. So I have, that level of mixed as well. So when I go through these situations and these things of feeling belonging, it's really just going inside yourself. How do you feel? How do you identify? Recognizing that, yes, I did grow up in this culture. I did grow up with this language. I did grow up in this place that promotes this identity, that promotes Native American heritage, culture, all of the above. And it's recognizing that you have to accept yourself. You have to accept that belonging internally before you can move forward. Because when you get that exclusion from other people, you can move past that. You can use that as a platform to educate others and say, hey, I might look a little different. I might, sound a little different. I might do things a little different, but I am still a part of this culture. I know that I belong because I internalize that. And then you can use that as a starting point to move forward with others, to promote that belonging so that you feel, more inclusive, so that you can actually feel like you're a part of it. But I think it all starts internally with yourself first and moving forward with that internal acceptance, internal belonging, and then promoting that with other people.
Absolutely. Got to start from the inside. If you don't accept it within yourself, how can you expect someone else to?
Absolutely.
Especially if you don't feel that belong and you feel lost. And this is the story of many people, where they are in different groups and different situations where they just don't necessarily identify with the group, or they feel like they're not completely connected to it. And that brings me to just thinking and talking a little bit about our shared past. So we are a growing country here in the States, and we have a past that sometimes isn't highlighted. Like you talked about this being Native American Heritage Month, as well as you talked about some of the history of Thanksgiving. So I wanted to ask both of you just to kind of tell me a little bit about your thoughts on where we were as an or not as an organization, but I guess you could say America is an organization, but we'll have that conversation another time. But where we are as or where we were, in history from the Native American perspective, and also from your perspective as well, Philip. So let's start with you, Philip. Let's start with just your perception of our shared history and where we started from as a country.
I mean, golly, without being too grim, especially as, a Black person, a person who descended from the enslaved, like it's not a very pleasant story to tell, and I know from the Native American perspective, it's similar, you know what I mean? And so to say that it's a very roses and candy and butterflies, no, it's not that. That's the reason why that's important, is to understand where we are now and why it should be celebrated. We do need to understand where we came from and why that deserves to be spoken about factually as well. And I think that a lot of people miss that, or in certain respects want to blot that out or tear those pages out of the American history notebook and say that this country hasn't always been that. That's not true. It has been, but also understand that there have been great strides that have been made by this country as a whole, and by our people, by my people, Black people, by Native American people, and by white people also, who have helped us facilitate feeling like we belong in a country that we were essentially brought to against our will as it pertains to the enslaved, and then this country was essentially taken from as it pertains to the Native American community. Understanding that both of those things are true, but we can also highlight the fact that we have come so far, and then not forgetting also that while we have come so far, and we can celebrate this moment, the fact that I can sit on here with a Native American woman, I can sit on here with a Black doctor, and speak intelligently about these things. We would not have had this platform to be able to do that before, or if the status quo remained from those times. We have evolved. We have moved forward. We have facilitated a certain sense of belonging, and it is on us to understand that we need to continue to push that belonging forward, because the more we include people, the more we gain different perspectives, the more we gain different appreciations for those who may not look like us, who may not sound like us, who may not act like us. And then we facilitate those people being comfortable in those spaces as well. So we came from a history that may be hard for certain people or all people to listen to understand, to learn about, but understanding that in learning about that history, the hard part is understanding that that was then, and that does affect now, but it doesn't have to continue to affect where we're going.
Outstanding. Well said. Well said. Hannah, I want to also open up the floor for you, just to provide some insight from your perspective as far as our history goes.
I really want to build off what Philip said, because he really hit a great point about history being hard. history is not meant to be, make you feel good about yourself, to make you, feel the butterflies, like Philip said. History is hard. We have a hard history, but that history does influence where we are today. But as Philip said, it doesn't have to impact where we are going if we can make certain changes that need to happen. So if we look at the table, Thanksgiving, just to build on that analogy and that reference, people of color, Native Americans, haven't always had a seat at that table. And where we're at now is we are at a crossroads to be able to open up the platform, say, hey, here's your seat, sit down, take it. You are welcome here. You belong here. And it's a really phenomenal place that we can actually be, because looking at the history, we get the Pilgrims sat down with the Wampanoag tribe and they, shared their first meal together. And there's no actual representation or actual diagram that actually happened. It's just something that we're told as, kids in the American history lessons that we learn that this happened, but there's no actual written documentation that this is what occurred in America. And then, of course, even if there is documentation of little bits and pieces of things that happened, they have excluded voices that weren't predominantly white. So we have to look at what we know from the facts of history, the different things that happened, that this was at a time Native American land before pilgrims came in, before colonizers came in, before, we had more people here. And so when we look at that and we look at the history of what happened, the different Indian wars that we faced, the different, the Battle of Little Bighorn. I know Dr. Dave said I'm a descendant of Chief Gall, who actually fought at Battle of Little Bighorn with Chief Sitting Bull. And so we look at that history. We know that there are atrocities that happen. We know that they're there. It's important that we know that they're there so that we can use those as a platform to say, hey, this was a bad thing that happened. How do we move forward? How do we bring people together to make sure that we all feel like we belong and that we can have an inclusive environment where people do feel like they have a seat at that table? So where that good feeling of that first Thanksgiving where everyone sat together and shared a meal can actually be a true representation of where we are today so that we can all come together.
Wonderful. I'm just, I want to take a moment and just speak to the audience and say, for those of you that are still here, thank you. And those of you who are watching, in different times and space, thank you for being with us. Being present and being available is important, because some of these discussions are challenging. And I can only imagine what managers, founders, and leaders within organizations have to deal with the constant challenges of supporting people, especially through a DE&I initiative. I actually heard a acronym. I can't remember the source, so please forgive me. But they said that they were JEDI, just, equitable, diverse, and inclusive. And if you're aware, I love Jedis. I'm a big Star Wars buff, so hearing something like that is fun to hear and fun to internalize and feel. So I want to bring it back to the present, because you both are talking about how the history has shaped us. But now let's acknowledge, as you have a little bit in some of your explanations or some of your presentations, how have we made changes and strides within the present, and what are you seeing that's positively growing, out of the present movements?
I'll take the floor.
Go for it.
So I think it's important to note here that many Native Americans don't actually celebrate Thanksgiving, or they celebrate it in a different way. And that's not to say we're not thankful, we're not grateful, because we are. But we also use that as a day to remember the tragedies that happened, to remember the people that died, and to honor them. And so our Thanksgiving might look a little bit different. So the steps that we've taken to, get to the point to where we want to be is honoring what happened. It's telling the history. We go into kind of a, Thanksgiving, we call it a truce giving. What is the truth that happened? We honor that truth, and then we move forward together as a collective whole. The steps that we've taken, I think, to move forward is really just honoring that history, and then deciding, where do we want to be at? Where do we want to be in 10 years, 50 years, 100 years, so that we can get to that inclusive environment where we want to be.
Golly, you make great points. Thank you. Just knocking it out. I think that one of the main things that we've done to be belonging is just the idea that we're recognizing we're on the path to recognizing, because I won't say that we are good at it, but we are consistently recognizing everybody from different walks of life. I think that if you don't remember the history, you are doomed to repeat it. And as we remember, that's why the history is important, but understanding that, there are plenty of laws that make uh life more inclusive for the people who may not feel included. And there have been so many different movements, from the Asian American movements in the 60s to the civil rights movement, and even some of the protests and movements that are going on now. We are fighting to get our voices heard, and I think that a seat at the table is not a not a privilege, it's a right for all who come around, and I also think that a seat at the table is not the goal, that is the starting point. You know what I mean? Like, we all deserve a seat at the table, but what we really want is a voice in the conversation. That's where we want to go. That's what we want to do, is be able to make known who we are and where we're coming from and how that fits into the larger picture uh of what our society and even the greater world looks like today. I think that we do a phenomenal job in doing that. And I think that we have a lot more to go. But I also think that we do have to take time and listen to the stories of everybody, whether it be um, the Asian American community, the Native American community, the Black community. Somebody mentioned the immigrant community that has come
Yeah,
in
I
the
saw that.
past 100 years. They have stories to tell as well, and they deserve to be heard. The LGBTQ community, everybody just deserves to hear their voices. We deserve to be able to speak and have our voices be heard. And then the people that are listening have to be conscious enough to understand that your experience isn't the only experience, and
Mhm.
that there are people who may have different lifestyles and experiences that are essentially different than yours, but that doesn't make them any less than you. And so I think the quality piece comes in there, and just understanding that we all live different lives. We all have a right to the life that we live, and hearing about the lives that other people lives can positively inform yours.
No question. And to top that off, and or just to continue that conversation, I think it's important that we're identifying the curiosity, learning about other cultures, learning about other, other ways of living is important to our growth as humans. Sometimes we become so siloed that we believe that this is the only reality when there are, innumerable numbers of realities. Um, you mentioned the Native American people, and we're talking about the present. And I live here in Seattle, so what we kind of call it occupied Duwamish territory, as this is formerly the land of the Duwamish people. And I think that it's important for people to learn about the land that you're a part of, the land that you're on. And the reason why we bring this up in this context is because it's equally important for industry and organizations to learn this. Because when you can learn cultures, you can easily, especially if you're in sales in some way, you can reach those target markets just that much easier and have more success if you really understand and champion their culture. So now we've talked a little bit about present. I want to turn on the dream sequence a little bit. Let's turn on the, if this were again another 90s reference, so pardon my age, but a little bit of little bit of if you know, uh let's think about the future. We've made some strides. We're in a place now where we're working together more. We're seeing the benefit of empathy. We're seeing the benefit of mental health. We're seeing the benefit of connecting and having more seats at the table. Where do we go from here? Or where can we go from here? What is a dream that you may have? For me, one of my dreams is like Gene Roddenberry, who's the creator of Star Trek, talked about having multicultural, multi-species people working together in the future, not only to support the growth of other star systems or other planets, but also supporting each other. So that's a part of my dream, is that maybe in the future we can actually see something like that. But I want to toss it back to you, Hannah. What about you? Where do you see organizations, us as a whole, as America, where do you see us going in the future in the sense of belonging?
Phenomenal question. I know I love the word phenomenal because that's really great, especially how we're moving forward. Where do we want to be? We want to offer that, goal. We want to have something there. It's important to talk about these things. It's important to address them, but where are we going? That's always, the end of the conversation that we really want to reach. And I think my goal is really just the education of what has happened, making sure that people know it. We had a question in the chat about what's the difference between, Indigenous Peoples Day and then also, Native American Heritage Month. And I want to touch that not everyone actually celebrates Indigenous People Day. Some people still call it Christopher Columbus Day. Some states still have it stated as that. Some states call it Native American Day. And what we really need is a collective, cohesive definition of what we're celebrating, why we're celebrating it, and why it's important. And my goal is really just once we get that education out there, once people know the truth of everything that's happened and the true history that we have, we can heal, we can grow, we can move forward and let go of, those past resentments that we could have because, hey, we're here, we're still here. Native Americans make up less than 1% of the American population. That's a small percentage. So how do we build on that population and make sure that our populations grow, that they're supported? And that would really be my goal, is just making sure that we can grow that population. We can hold those cultures in, hold our languages in. There's so many different Native American languages, so many different cultural aspects, and we're losing a lot of it. We call Native American languages dying languages for a reason, because they aren't being taught. They aren't, being promoted and being grown. And where I want to see us go from there is being able to celebrate those differences. I want us to say, okay, hey, this person is different than me. Philip made an important point earlier and said that, we were on the call with a Black doctor, a Native American like me. And then, of course, a Black man right there who's a veteran. We have all of these different backgrounds. We have all of these different places where we come from. Yet we can all be on this platform. We can all share our story, and then we can all use that to move forward. So I think where we need to go is just make sure that people have their voice, their story, so that they can be heard, so that that healing can happen, and that we can realize that our differences, while they are different, at the end of the day, we are all humans. We are all, people that want to be heard. We are all people that want to come together, belong together. And so I think sharing that history, sharing that past, sharing our different cultures will bring us together ultimately. And that would be my goal for where I want to be, whether it be 10 years, 15 years, 50 years. That's where I hope that we can eventually get.
That's a wonderful vision of the future. Man, I can almost see it. Philip, I want to bounce it over to you, and give you an opportunity to paint a picture of belonging in the future, what that would look like for you.
I think that, Hannah really hit the nail on the head. I think that just my future would be all cultures, races, genders, and identities being able to have their voices represented at the highest levels without discontent or malice. I think that that's ultimately where, if I had to say it in a succinct manner, that's what I would say. I think that we, as a culture, we need to stop saying stuff like I don't see color or I don't see race and things like that. I think that that is damaging because what you're doing is eradicating the identity of the person you're actually standing in front of. You say that you don't see this, but it is impossible for you not to see it. This is something you have to see. But in seeing that and understanding the differences doesn't, and it should not create a system of superiority, I guess you could say. Equality is what I'm really looking for. I think that a lot of us don't understand that being equal does not mean being the same. They're not the same things. My perspective and my position is not different. Even in my college programs, I'm typically the only black man in the room, and one of few black people. And so when I walk in, and I walk in how I walk in, I ain't got the chains on now, but I do. I always have my chain on. Shout out
Just
to
a
my
little
beautiful
bit.
woman, Candace. You know what I mean? Shout out, Candace. I love you, baby. I will have bigger chains on. I'll say that. Bigger chains, hoodie, Tim's, J's, whatever. And so I get looked at very stereotypically until I speak. And then the perception around me changes. What we have to do is understand that we consciously and subconsciously have those stereotypes in our head. The idea is to understand that there is a bias within you, understand that bias, and then fight against that bias when you meet somebody who you could judge stereotypically. I just want a world where we all get to exist, and we all get to exist in a space where no matter who comes to the table, their perspective is heard. And then that is represented in our society. There's no need to steal other people's culture or take from other people's customs and things like that, because we all share it freely. We all understand that we are in this together. And the goal is not to alienate ourselves by feeling like we are superior to somebody else, but understanding that our differences is what makes all of our voices valid. That's where I would want to see us go.
Wonderful, man. I'd like to see, yeah, I'd look, a couple of hands there. If you guys have the reactions, definitely throw them in I appreciated everyone throwing in the responses there. We need that feedback because this is a challenging conversation that needs to be had. And I appreciate the candidness that both of you are bringing to this conversation. I want to take a pivot for a moment, though, and talk a little bit about what we're doing differently here at LifeGuides. So we are actually announcing today that we are adding 2 new channels within our LifeGuides platform. One of them being the military channel, military and veteran channel with guides who have specific knowledge to that lived experience of being either a veteran, active duty, or retired military. And on the other side, we are also launching a new, I love to call it abilities channel, because everyone has a ability, rather it be slightly different. For example, for me, I can make my thumb look like a hockey stick. It kind of moves weird. I don't know. Double jointed is what I was told. See a couple laughs there. You get the joke. It's weird, but we all have these special, so to speak, abilities. Although that has no, my thumb doing that has no utility. But all of us have the opportunity to learn from other people who have different abilities. And so with that, we are launching 2 new channels there. So you heard it first, everyone here. What I love about what we're doing here is we're opening up the opportunity for additional peer-to-peer support within this community. And we have this connection where we're filling the gap. We know what we are. We know what we provide here at LifeGuides, which is completely different, than therapy. Our tagline is more casual than therapy, more qualified than a friend. And that's what we are here to do. We're here to be that ear to listen. So I want to go back into the military side for a moment and ask another question to you, Philip, around the military. We have Veterans Day coming up. Can you share, a moment or something where you felt acknowledged, for being a veteran, and you felt that, again, that belonging of the greater community?
Let me think. I was going home. I was stationed in Alaska, of all places.
Hey, I love Alaska.
That's a
No, just
it's a
I do love Alaska.
it's
It's awesome.
it's another conversation. Alaska is a crazy place. It's beautiful, but it's crazy. So I'm going home to Erie, Pennsylvania. Shout out Erie, Pennsylvania. And I'm traveling home in my uniform, because of the job that I did in the military. I wasn't supposed to wear my occupational badge, and so I didn't have it on my uniform at all. And so, even if I did, normal people probably wouldn't know what it was, but it was a hazard based on the job that I did. So
Mhm.
I'm going home, uniform, all of that kind of stuff. I'm just sitting in the airport waiting on my flight, and this couple, it was a middle-aged couple, white couple. They just came up to me, and I'm just sitting there. I think I got my headphones on. I'm just bopping to some music or something like that. And they came up to me and kind of stood in front of me. And so I'm like, oh, I get a quick glance up, like, oh, okay, they need a seat. Well, there's all kind of seats around here. So why are they standing in front of me? You know what I mean? And so the guy just kind of did one of these. And so I took a headphone out, and he was like, I just want to say thank you for your service. You don't receive,
Wow.
when you deal with businesses, they tend to say stuff like that. They will. People on the everyday, you don't hear that as much,
Mhm.
and it is a very humbling experience, because again, like I said in the beginning, you're taught to be selfless, but in that essentially teaching to be selfish, what happens is you lose the ability to accept acknowledgement. And so when people say something about, like, oh, thank you for your service or something like that, it was always just a whatever, you know what I mean? Like I'm doing this, and I'm just one of many, but like they felt compelled to come up to me in an airport, even though I looked busy. And a lot of times when people get their headphones in and they're looking like I don't want to be bothered.
Right.
They didn't
Like, don't
care.
disengage or don't engage. Right.
Exactly. Exactly. Like they didn't care. They, gave me the wave. I took a headphone out and he said, thank you for your service. So I stood up, I shook his hand, and I said, thank you for the support. I appreciate the support. And then the wife, or his significant other, I don't know exactly what she was. She said it too. Thank you for your service. We really appreciate you helping to keep the country safe. I appreciate that. And it's crazy because it felt like going into the military was the only option that I had left before I descended into things that I didn't want to do. And so
Mhm.
it was almost not a choice, but to be acknowledged for something that I felt almost compelled to do. It was an amazing feeling. That feels great, and it's little moments like that that can make the difference in the life of a military member, one of my brothers and sisters in arms. Don't we don't solicit that kind of response, and we don't even necessarily even expect it. We're kind of taught not to, but when we do get it, it's always an amazing feeling, and it makes everything else feel like it's worth it. Little words
Mhm.
of acknowledgement like that.
That's wonderful. That's those little acts of kindness, and acts of acknowledgement. That's another part of belonging that's important to highlight is when you see someone, when you acknowledge them as a human being on just that basic level, it means the world. As humans, that's all we really want. We want to be seen. And if you don't believe it, look at all of these social media applications. These are all platforms which allow people to express themselves. And what they do is, they get feedback through likes and whatnot, but they all want to be seen. They want to be acknowledged, and I want to take another turn here and ask a quick question to you, Hannah. We're launching this new channel, and you're a person who has been living successfully and thriving in a world that is not designed, typically for people who have hearing challenges. Can you maybe share an instance where you were, blown away by the kindness of someone else, or maybe even the curiosity of someone else with your disability?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dave. So like Dave said, I am deaf. I do have cochlear implants, so it has completely changed my life. I got those about 1.5 years, but I did spend my entire life, struggling with my hearing. And I say struggling just because, not because being deaf is a struggle, but because we live predominantly in an abled world. We live in a world that is not made as easily accessible for people with different abilities. So that's why this channel is so great, that we can offer the support that we need for people who might be struggling with that, and getting the resources that they need, and then also just the support. So I would say a level of kindness that I would, and this is going to sound like LifeGuides paid me to say this, but they didn't, I promise you.
Yeah, I can second that. We did.
The level of kindness, one of the things that really blew me away. So I went through school, through college, through getting my master's degree, being deaf, all of that. And I started applying for jobs, and I got turned away a lot. And, they say, oh, with the American with Disabilities Act that passed in 1990, that doesn't happen. People don't get turned away for being deaf or for having different abilities. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to always be the case. I got turned away from a lot of jobs, jobs where I thought I would be getting offered it, and then they would get it taken away from me once they found out that I had deafness. So when I came to LifeGuides, I came in, to the meeting, and I'm like, yep, I'm deaf. And instead of, being like, oh, we'll get back to you, or like, we'll email you, what I got from LifeGuides was, tell me more about that. Let's hear it. Actually, let's give you a platform where you can talk about your deafness, where we can celebrate your deafness. And this isn't my first Thrive Time presenting on. I presented on one about inclusivity previously, where I got to, share my story, talk about growing up, my deafness, the struggles that I faced. And not many companies really provide you with that, because not only were they accepting of my deafness, they allowed me to thrive with my deafness, to provide me with a platform where I can share that with other people, and also help other people with the difficulties that they potentially face. And then even with this new channel that we have, and I get to talk, I get to voice my opinions. I'm like, hey, maybe we shouldn't use this specific verbiage. Maybe this would be better. Maybe this would be a great subtopic under this topic. This is how we can support other people. And LifeGuides is really phenomenal in the fact that when I provide this feedback, they don't say, no, I don't think that's right. They say, okay, well, how can we do better? What should we change? Educate me on that. And so for me, being in the corporate world, being, in the job force, you don't see that. You don't see that from other companies. And it has really been eye-opening for me to have that, and to have a job that truly supports me. Because like Dave said in the beginning, I'm also on the corporate side of LifeGuides. I'm the client success specialist. I'm sure a lot of our clients have seen me before, so I'm excited to see you guys again. But it really is phenomenal that they have allowed me to thrive here. And that's also really opened up in my own acceptance of, hey, I might be different. And I'm going to go back and touch on Philip's point a little bit too. It's just because people are different doesn't mean that they are less. It just means that it's a different, a different way of looking, a different way of speaking. And LifeGuides really promotes that, of us coming together. And so, like I said before, LifeGuides didn't pay me to say that, but that is really one level of kindness that I've experienced that truly has pulled on my old heartstrings.
Can I just say something real quick?
Go for it. Go for it.
Because I think that what often happens too is people are aware of the, how do I put this? The visible disabilities. Do you get what I'm saying? But there are invisible ones as well that people deal with on a daily basis, and there's not enough acknowledgement about those as well. And so I would want us, and Life Guides does do a great job of this, but anything that is brought up is taken into consideration, and our voices are always heard. And I think that one of the things that greater society needs to pay attention to is the people who may not have a disability that you can actually see, such as something like a severed limb, or blindness or something like that. There may be invisible disabilities, such as, I deal with post-traumatic stress disorder in certain ways, and so people would never know that based on looking at me or listening to me or seeing how I am on a daily basis. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And so we have to do a better job as a society understanding that there may be things under the hood. The car may look wonderful, but that does not mean that the car works fine. And I bought a lemon, so I know what that is, and we do have a responsibility to pay attention to that as well.
Wonderful ad. It's important for us to acknowledge those invisible disabilities, and even on the mental health side, people who may be suffering, alone with, depression, or you think about it, anxiety. People who just cannot get out of the house or get into certain social situations because it's invisible. You can't see it. It's also sometimes difficult to quantify unless you have, gold standard measure, a psychological measure. But we need more of that, more understanding, curiosity. And I'll preach this, on my slight soapbox: patience. Sometimes it's okay if things aren't as lightning fast as you want to be. And I learned that as a child when my mother had a friend who had a speech impediment, and I also had a speech impediment as a kid. And when she would talk, we would kind of hurry her up, like, yeah, I know what you're going to say next. This is what you're really trying to say. And she taught me the importance of just being patient, just allowing her to work through it when she was attempting to express herself. And it was wildly helpful for her well-being. And then it also taught me a valuable lesson of the importance of being patient. So we're coming towards the end, and I know we can continue on. This has been a wonderful conversation. For those of you who are new, we typically end with gratitude, putting in the chat what you're grateful for. But we want to ask a different question. I'm going to pop it in the chat as well, just so everyone can see it. And then I'll mention it, here. What are you going to do to help that next person feel seen, or, make that next person feel like they're here, they're corporeal, they're actually within this world? And what are you doing in your world to facilitate belonging? This could be within your organization, this could be within your local communities, but sharing that is immensely helpful because there's others who can learn from you. So if anyone in the chat, just definitely throw those in. I'd like to highlight a few of them before we exit today. I already see one coming in from Kimberly, and just grateful for our partnership. I'm grateful for our partnership too. Actually, to shout out Philip, he was recently on a BBB panel regarding the military, and I can't wait for it to come out because I really want to see it. And I enjoy all of our partnerships with all of the member organizations that we connect with. Just know that what we're building with LifeGuides is an overall community of empathy, light working, human-centric individuals who are looking to improve the world, period. Full stop. So if there's anyone else who wants to just offer what you're doing, pop that in the chat. And while they're doing that, is there anything that you're doing, Hannah, to help that next person feel seen, or help someone find their way in the world?
Great question, Dave. And I really love the chat and I'm seeing it blow up. So I love your guys' comments as well. But what I'm personally doing is, we look at me, I'm deaf, I'm Native American, I'm a woman, different levels of those stereotypes. But when you look at these different things, you might not necessarily know them by looking at me. So what I do when I approach people is I say, hey, I don't know everything, but you have to provide them with an opportunity to talk and with an opportunity to share that with you. Because I think that being inclusive doesn't mean knowing everything about every single thing or every identity, every culture, every different ability. What being inclusive means is providing people with the space to talk about that, to share that with you and say, hey, this is who I am, and accept them for what they say. So what I do to promote that, sense of belonging is really just opening up that space for people.
Outstanding. I want to just interject real quick right before I jump to you, Philip, to get your feedback. And I want to highlight, this came through in the chat from Candace, and Candace says that I've been working on having an open mind, not trying to assume anything about anyone's behavior, why they may think the way they do, or jumping to conclusions without hearing their stories first. Wonderful, wonderful, absolutely outstanding way to look at how to operationalize patience and having that open mind. I'm telling you, it'll help your mental health. It'll also help the people that you're working with as well. So let's jump over to Philip. What are you doing, to make people feel more seen in the world?
I think first, one of the things that I'm doing is I represent the opportunity to get into spaces that are not traditionally held by people like us. You know what I mean? And so excellence means that I get to walk into spaces that are not reserved for me and be the example that other people can follow. Along with that, I do a lot of work and reaching out to people who are not like me. I know what the people who are like me are like, or I assume, and maybe assumptions are wrong, you know what I mean? But I do make it a point to try and reach out to people who are just nothing, who are nothing like me, who just have experiences that are completely different and separate than who I am and where I come from and what I'm used to is what I'll say. And I'll shout out, I just recently reached out to my guy Richard Rubin, who's a life guide on here. And we talked for 2 hours, I'll tell you that. And I was like, every time I get a chance, I'm going to talk to him because his perspective, the way he has experienced the world, even though we are different, I am a younger Black man who came from impoverished circumstances to be where I'm at. He was a super privileged man who came from Long Island, you know what I mean? And basically not lived his life, but he is a gay man, a gay white man. Our experiences are similar in that we're men. That's about it. You know what I mean? And so we kind of feast off of that privilege, but there are so many things that are different. Reaching out to somebody like him and just talking to him, and not even talking, but listening to him and hearing what he has to say, hearing his perspective, his experiences, and how he views things will help to better inform me and how I view things and how I view people who might be different than me. And he is an example of the work that's being done. I consider him somebody who will be a great mentor for me moving forward, because he holds the knowledge that I feel as though I need. And so just holding space for any and everybody, any experience, any lifestyle, any culture, and just being able to say, hey, you may not be able to tell your story to the world, but you can tell it to me because I'm here to listen to you. And I think that's something that if we all were able or willing to say, hey, you don't have to tell your story to the rest of the world, but you can tell it to me and I'll listen with intent. How much better would the world be if we knew that everybody was willing to listen and hear our stories, you know? So that's
Wow.
what I'm doing.
Mic drop. We are slightly over time. We're just at time. Again, we can keep going. Thank you so much for everyone. I love the chat. There was so much love and there's so much insight too. Please, everyone, if you are in the chat, take some of those jewels with you to your organization. Continue to lift up those who are lifting you up and giving space to those who need support. And to those people who are living with mental illness and those challenges, we are here for you. We can help get you connected with mental health professionals if that's what you need as far as clinical support, but we're also here to be that ear to listen. So with that, we'll sign off. Thanks for everybody for staying just a little bit later than normal, and you have a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.